Hello, everybody. This is Casey. My name's Casey. I'm the author of Supervolution Awakening. I go by Kamitoan. That's my handle for most of my writing. I have Rise of a Monster up as well. I think there's a link to it somewhere. Sorry, it's my first AMA, but feel free to ask anything you're interested in. More than happy to respond to questions or just share a little bit about writing, publishing, self-publishing, or storytelling in general. And I'll put this down. Yep, I'm doing pretty well. Uh, it's been a pretty nice Saturday out. It's bright. I'm actually working on the next chapter of Rise of a Monster right now, since I appear to have some time. How is uh how is it wherever you are? I don't know how to pronounce that name. I apologize. It's Tokg. Is your name Tokg? I'm probably butchering that. I apologize. No, it's fine. I'm just glad I was able to at least get close to pronouncing it right. Are you a reader or author or just part of the Lit RPG Legion Facebook group? How did I get started in writing? That's a good question. So I actually have a memory from back in like second grade of me trying to write stories because I'd always read a lot of books growing up. It was hard to it's hard for my parents to get me out of them. And eventually, I just wanted to start telling my own stories. And when I talked my brother's ear off, or talked my mother's ear off, I eventually went off to the corner to try and write. And those creative writing assignments in elementary and middle school really uh, opened up new possibilities for me, and that I didn't know that. I guess I hadn't really thought that I could tell a full story all from beginning to end. So I would take those and I would go crazy with them. Like they would request like, "Hey, let's do a page and just make up something or 500 words," and I would write like 10 pages, or I'd still be working on the assignment like a week later. Um, so that was kind of when I knew that I always wanted to do something like this. And I, over the years, as I got older, I would, I'm glad you liked the first few chapters. Hope you like the rest of them. Yeah, prompts really helped me. I did a whole lot of responding to the Reddit subreddit writing prompts. I would respond to a couple on there, and then I do like page responses. I did under a few different accounts, and then after that, I started posting on Royal Road. Let's see. Where does your inspiration come from when you write? Honestly, it tends to come from the characters themselves. So once I get into the world, like for Supervolution, um, when I start writing, I start thinking about what they would do, and then the characters start telling me what they would do, and then I coordinate that with where I know the story's going to go or what's going to be happening also in the world, and that's kind of where it flows from there. My friends and family, we play a lot of games together. We play tabletop RPGs, and I get a lot of inspiration from them. Actually, a few of them are actually in Supervolution Awakening. I asked them before I started reading this book or started writing this book. Actually, I asked them what they would want as superpowers, and they told me, and then I put them inside the book. Is there a particular book that really sparked your creativity? Yes, The Chronicles of Amber by Robert Zielinski. That one blew my mind as a young kid. I remember reading the giant, like 3,000 page monster, and I probably read it at a way younger age than you're supposed to. But that one blew my mind. Do you have an overall plan for the books, or are you more of a pantser? Uh, each chapter is more of a pantser approach, I guess. I start them at even this one that I'm doing for Rise of a Monster right now. Um, I have a general idea of what I think is going to happen in it, and then I pick a place, I start, and then I go from there. I don't do outlines for the entire book. Whenever I do that, I end up deviating it from it so far that the outline doesn't matter anymore. Like for Supervolution, I knew that I was going to get the final battle with the mayor, but I had no idea where it was going to go in between there. So I discovered that as I was writing. Yeah. And if you are writing or considering writing, I highly recommend that subreddit that I mentioned, the writing prompts subreddit, because there's always interesting things in there. There's always cool prompts and ideas, and you can just it's not something that you have to continue with, so you can just be creative with it, post it, and move on, or read other people's stuff. And there's a lot of good people there. How long did it take me to write the first? So Super Revolution took, I want to say, about 4 to 5 months to finish the first draft of it. And then when I was done with that, I put it down because of some life events, like everybody else. And then when I came back to it, it took about 2 or 3 months to do a full edit run all the way through. And that's when I added about 60 pages or more, 60,000 words somewhere in there. So I edited and cut down like 200 extra pages worth of writing. So all in all, about 9 months. The Rise of a Monster I started in January, and the first edition of that, or the first edition, the first draft of that will be done in the next week or two. So about 5 6 months is about how long it takes, and then another about half that time for editing. I could do it faster, but I don't do full time writing just yet. Was lit RPG what you always what you wanted to write for? I've written for a number of genres. I have different books that I haven't put out there yet because there's not enough chapters, or they're not finished yet, or I don't have a full idea of where I want it to go. Um, but once I found the lit RP genre, I loved it. I read The Land, Chaos Seas. I read Dungeon Crawler Carl. Those books drew me in immediately. I can't tell you how many times I've re-listened to the audiobooks for them, and they've been an inspiration. I always wanted to get to that level, I suppose. So yeah, once I found the lit RP genre, I knew I'd found one that I really wanted to work in. I also eventually want to write. I've had a lot of people hone in on certain interactions, and people have suggested that I write romance novels, which I might do in the future, but I have no current plans for that. Um, I do like the mystery genre. I like sort of the horror aspects as well, and I've got a couple books in the works that may eventually see the light. Um, some of those writings are actually on my Patreon. I've got a couple of the first chapters up for those. I think they're free to access, actually. What do you do to handle constructive criticism in your writing? Initially, it was try not to take it as a personal attack. I feel constructive criticism is great, and I love it. It's great feedback, but it can hurt sometimes, especially when you're new at writing, to get feedback that is constructive but doesn't get received as constructive. If that makes any sense, it's hard to sometimes take people take shots at your baby is what it feels like, even though they're trying to help. But when I was writing Supervolution for the first time and I was getting all that feedback, it was extremely helpful because when I, took the emotions out of it and I went back and looked, I was like, oh, they're right. I do need to do this, or I do need to add a little bit more emotion here, or yeah, this doesn't make sense, or I forgot to add something that makes it make sense. So now that it makes sense for the readers. So for my current approach now for constructive criticism is I take it, I incorporate it, I try to read through it, read back through what the sections are that they're talking about, and then if it makes sense to make a change or make an edit, then I thank them for it and I move on. I try to add it. Is there a long-term plan for the series, like a trilogy or more? Yes, actually, Supervolution is planned to be a 3-book series, although I do have plans to take it outside of that. The first book sort of handled their town. The second book is going to handle what's going on in the different states, and the third book is planned to be more of like all of the conflict going on on Earth at the moment. And then if I decide to take the series outside of that, it will move on for more of what's coming and happening outside of Earth in the distant solar systems, different parts of the galaxy as Earth starts to join that stage. Let's see. You mentioned your inspirations from other lit RPGs. With all the other lits and styles out there, what are you doing to make your takes on the system stand out? Well, that one's twofold. I try not to do something that's already being done out there. When I started Rise of a Monster, I shopped it around actually to a few of my friends, and I was like, does this idea sound good? Is this funny? And when I got good feedback from there, I was like, all right, cool. Let's work with this. Let's take it on. And actually, Alexander Edwards, this individual right here, is one of my great friends, and he's been helping me build the system because I suck at the math part of it. I enjoy playing around with it, but I'm very much this sounds cool, let's do this, rather than right, how's the math on that supposed to work? Let's make the numbers work and let's get this into a coherent system. So I have really good friends, and Alex is one of them, who helped me get the systems accurate and consistent. And then for Supervolution, that one was based off of the Super Sales on Superheroes. That was where it was, well, not based off of, it was inspired from that. That's a very good series. I highly recommend it. The power that the main character has in that is very similar to what Ryan has in Supervolution. But I always felt, as I was reading through it, that there were different ways that he could go, or if the power worked a different way, how would that work? And then how would that work in a modern day setting? Because the Super Sales and Superheroes, their world setting is different. So I kind of took that and went in a whole different direction. So whenever I try to write, I try to put my own spin on it, if that makes sense. And then I guess long-term plan for this series for Rise of a Monster. That one I have several books ahead already planned. Actually, I don't have a currently determined end date or number of books for Rise of a Monster. I could just keep writing that one forever. I think that one's a lot of fun. The main characters there's an eventual ceiling of power that they could hit, but getting there is going to be a long time coming. Are you going to try to come to Dragon Con this year? Um, I hadn't thought of it yet, actually. Wow, that's in August, right? I could attempt, yeah. I've gone to Dragon Con a few times, always as an attendee, never really as an author. I think to show up as an author, you have to get a spot like right after Dragon Con ends for the next one. So I think it's a little bit too early or too late to be thinking about it from that perspective. I might just go though. That would be entertaining. Beginning of September, sorry. So yeah, right after. Um, yeah. Let's see. What do you do for downtime to recharge? I try to spend time with family and friends. My daughter is a constant source of renewal for me, even though she's 3 years old and runs circles around me and runs circles around her mom. So chasing her around, going to the park, going on the swings, just getting out into nature, that recharges me a lot. I also build tables, and it sounds silly, but writing down new ideas for other stories helps me move out of I guess creator fatigue for a certain story. So diving into a new one and getting excited about a new idea will help me work back when I refocus on the other one. There's a lot of us that go that aren't on the tracks. We'll go to meet and network. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that actually. As well as strength, that could be fun. Not in this group. They do their own thing and it turns out better. I don't know what that means. Amazing. Oh, yeah. Who are you publishing under? Currently, I'm self-publishing for Supervolution, although I have a couple different publishing companies that are interested in Rise of a Monster. I'll be talking to them more once I actually finish the book. And then for Supervolution Awakening, once I get done with book 2, I'll resume talks on that one as well. There's Athon Publishing and was that Portal Publishing as well. Portal was very interested in lit RPG style books that I write, so that would probably be the next way that I go if they're still interested, which I hope they are. But Amazon makes it incredibly easy to self-publish. Their whole process, their editing, their self-editing, everything about it, getting the book cover ready. I did actually ended up doing that myself, and Amazon makes it super easy. So that was really nice. Kyle is talking about Gildify Con. Oh, it's an online con. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll check my schedule. That sounds pretty cool. Let's see if I can go. How do you bring humor to your series? Do you discuss among friends or others offers to get things? So, I have this weird thing whenever people talk or make references or just in general conversation, I will get a scene will play out in my head off of something that they say, and I'll have to just play it out or type it out. And my friends at work can attest to this because we chat all the time. And I'll just play that scenario out, and then I'll keep that as in like some part of my memory banks that I just can't get rid of. And when I'm writing, if something fits, then I'll add that situation in or add that entertainment in. I've watched a lot of. I enjoy comedians, Netflix specials, and stuff like that. I wouldn't say I take anybody's jokes, but it informs my level of humor, and then I try to bring that into the books. For Rise of a Monster, there's a lot there's a lot of really entertaining stuff in there, and when I'm talking to my friends or about it, sometimes they'll throw up ideas or they'll throw up something that sparks something else. So I guess the best way to bring humor to your series, or how I bring humor to my series, is to talk to people and make jokes and crack jokes all the time. And then you have sort of this ongoing, growing pool that you can use to help your writing. And people who throw memes in the Discord channels, that's always very entertaining. Let's see, what else? Yeah, I read comics. I've been reading web comics for a long time, and that is definitely informed my writing and my humor. The zingers, and that you'll see a lot of that in Rise of a Monster. You see a decent amount of that in Supervolution. I don't think that the world needs to be taken so seriously all the time, especially and maybe even particularly in high stakes situations. Humor can help diffuse it, so I try to add it in there. If you could have any narrator for your books, who would it be and why? Steve Baldry, top of the list. I absolutely love that man's voice. In a completely platonic way, I've fallen asleep to him talking a lot, just from listening to Cradle or other books that he's done. So I would definitely take him 10 times out of 10. Travis Baldry. My bad. Travis Baldry, Jeff Hayes, Andrea Parsnew. I don't know who Steve Baldry was. I apologize. Definitely Travis Baldry, Jeff Hayes, Andrea Parsnew. There are some other people that do absolutely phenomenal work. Any of them, anybody who can bring life to more than one character, I would be more than happy to have them narrate. I actually have another friend who does narration, and she may end up doing Supervolution. Let's see. Is your preferred scenario sci-fi apocalyptic, or you just want to write? I enjoy writing a lot of different things. As far as sci-fi apocalyptic, I've got one or two more ideas in there that I could explore in that genre, but I think for now, Supervolution is really the only one that I want to have in that genre, if that makes sense. And I really enjoy fantasy RPGs. Steve Campbell. Okay, so that's probably where my mind went. Thank you for saving me the embarrassment there. Fantasy lit RPG is a lot of fun to write, just because I've played Pathfinder for over 10 years now. So I have a lot of stories that intersect with that genre really well. I've been a big fan of the Dresden Files for a long time, and that informs a lot of what I do in Supervolution. So that's why it's set in modern day Earth rather than, a futuristic Earth or something like that. I really wanted to explore modern day happenings because I feel like it's more relevant to us, since we can identify with what's going on. Is there a sequel in the works to Supervolution? Yes, actually. The book 2 is starting to be posted on Royal Road already. The prologue for it and the first chapter are up right now. It's posting every Friday, one new chapter, and then once I get hi Harvey McWilliams, nice to meet you. Once I get up there high enough, I'll start adding those chapters to Patreon, and it'll work just like Rise of a Monster. So it'll be about 4 chapters ahead. Yeah, Pathfinder's great. I was actually just playing it yesterday. I love that. It's a great TTRPG, great storytelling mechanism. Oh, there's another series too that I was going to write. It's actually set in the same world as Rise of a Monster, but it's a fantasy lit RPG. Sorry to go back to somebody's question previously. Um, that one is actually just going to follow goblins, because I think it'd be really entertaining to just follow a tribe of goblins around as they roam roam the world and try to deal with their own interpretation of it. I'll start putting that one up on Royal Road probably sometime in the next year, assuming I can find enough time. But that one shares the same world setting as Rise of a Monster, so I'll have another series going on in that genre. Where do you draw inspiration from? Definitely the books that I've read, the games that I've played, the people that I work with, and all of my friends. They're constant sources of inspiration. What is your favorite moment in any of your books? That's a hard question. Ooh, hmm. There's a moment in Supervolution Awakening. There's two moments in there that I really appreciate. There's the spot where Ryan figures out that he can start making new materials, and he starts learning that he can like suck up an entire tree for energy and use that to make new things. And that moment and the interactions that he has with the people as he's building the base and he's starting to make new friends, starting to build his group. I really enjoy that part of the book. That one, it hits something in me, just building a community and having everybody come together. Um, so I love that moment. The other moment that I love in that one, it's for entirely different reasons, but it's the battle scene when they're coming back to the base to defend it, and the defenders have fallen for the most part. So it's a little bit of spoilers. I apologize if you haven't read that far ahead. But Ryan goes back to save everyone, and he comes up with a pretty good plan. He redoes his monster truck, kites it out with a bunch of different equipment, and that was a lot of fun to write. There was a lot of emotion that went into that, and there's some the chapter immediately following that is very emotional for me. So those are two of my favorite moments from that book. From Rise of a Monster, let's see. I honestly, it'd be hard for me to pick. Every chapter is kind of a hoot to write. Anytime that Sean and Jill get a good amount of time to just volley back and forth, I enjoy it a lot. Whenever they're sharing more about their experiences with each other, I enjoy those moments. The first part, I think the first chapter when he realizes that he's a skeleton and his ass falls off. If you haven't read that far in the books, he gets reincarnated as a skeleton. So his flesh is still on him, and he laughs so hard at something that his ass falls off. And I still laugh about that part every time I get to that in editing. So yeah, that's my favorite part in that book for now. We'll see how it goes in the future. And yes, yay goblins, always entertaining. That series is going to be a lot of fun because the goblins actually have sort of a chaotic effect on them, so they warp things around the world and themselves. The more of them that are together, and that's kind of a background knowledge thing, I guess, that you're not going to see as you read right away. But that affects everything that's going on, and yeah, I really like that series. Yeah, Goblin's a little crafty. And in that one of the things that I did, which if you've ever read, what is it called? Alex, you might have to help me out. It's the book. I can't remember the title right now, but it's got at the start of every chapter, there's like an excerpt that tells you something more about the world. And not Life Reset. It's the sci-fi one where he's got the suit that powers up with him. Iron Prince. Yeah. In that book, every chapter starts with like some other individual from the series talking about something, sharing some wisdom, sharing some background, sharing some lore. And I did that for the Goblin story. Every chapter starts that way, and I really enjoy it. It'll be interesting too because it shares the same world as Rise of a Monster. Using that to actually reveal things about the other world, so that'd be kind of fun. Do you plan to have crafting in your books? Great question. Yes, actually, Rise of a Monster has its own crafting system that the main character will be getting into. Not this book because he doesn't have time, but the next book and the book after that. There's actually a really cool system that I'm thinking about. It's got like it's got like rune magic that he's going to use to etch onto his own bones, and I think that's really cool. And he's gonna I'm not gonna iron anything out just yet, but his background experience as a programmer is going to come into play as he discovers how magic works in this world, and then tries to program magic into himself. I thought that would be a really cool interplay. And then as far as crafting like mundane items and stuff like that, absolutely. You can already kind of see Gel morphing into different items or attempting to make some of them as he gets his arsenal of abilities. And that will probably expand as the series goes on. What are common traps for an aspiring writer? Any tips? Stopping writing at any point. That's a common trap. There's something that Jim Butcher talks about in one of his blog posts. He does a series of blog posts on just how to write a book. There's like 5 or 6 of them. You can Google it. It's fantastic. But one of the things that he talks about in there is called the Great Swampy Middle. It's when you've been writing a book, you've been really excited about it. You have the beginning, you have your end, and you're trying to get to the end, and you just kind of get mired down in all these extra details, in exploring maybe part of the world, and you sort of lose your way and lose your connection to how to get to the end. And you're just kind of stuck in what he calls the Great Swampy Middle. You've lost your story drive. You've lost the sort of the momentum that you were building. You've lost maybe the tension that you were building. And that whenever you hit that point, his advice and my advice is, because it helped me with Supervolution and it helped me with Rise of a Monster, is to just stop right there, cut back on maybe wherever you were stuck in, find where your tension was, and then zoom back in towards the end of the book. There's actually, you can see where I did something like that in Supervolution, where the stakes kind of just jump up again. That was where I was stuck. I didn't know where else to go or how to get into it. So I was just like, screw it. Let's go. Let's meet the mayor. Let's have the meeting with the final boss and just go to it. And that can really help you finish your book. And then if you need to go back in and add more chapters or add more of that story stuff, work that in. That's the time to do it, but make sure you get to the end first. Any other tips? One of the things that helped me, because I'm great at deadlines that involve the expectations of other people, is posting schedules. So have a schedule and stick to it. Force yourself to do it. Like for Supervolution, it was weekly at first, and I was writing. My daughter had just been born around then, so I was putting her to sleep on the couch or on my chair, and I was writing chapters on my phone because I knew that it had to come up on Monday, and it was Sunday night. So make a schedule, stick to it. That's a great way to do it. And don't worry about your first draft. It may not be great, but you can't edit words that aren't there. Do you do sprints? Yeah, I actually did NaNoWriMo, that month, National Novel Writing Month, that month-long section where you're supposed to get 50,000 words. I did that a couple of times for different books, and then for Supervolution, and again for Rise of a Monster. Sprints help a lot. Sometimes if I get like 2 or 3 days or a week that I know that I'll have time, I try to build chapters ahead of time, especially for posting schedules. Staying ahead of that, having a backlog is very comforting. It's a little more relaxing for your mental state so that you don't have to worry as much. I recommend them for that. Where did your system idea for Supervolution come from? So that one was sort of a melding of what I had seen in Super Sales on Superheroes, what I had seen in The Land, the Chaos Seed series by Alaron Kong, and then sort of my own spin on how it would work or how the energy system would work in real life. So I tried to add and incorporate real world physics to it to a degree at least. So power, like the energy that characters have, is based at least partially on like caloric counts, what you would actually need to fuel that energy in motion or kinetically or however else. Um, Whether it's drawing fire, extra strength, or super speed or something like that. Um, that's where that idea came from. It was trying to meld, at least in a more understandable way, some sci-fi aspects with lit RPG aspects, and then bring physics into there and try to make them play nice together. Let's see, other common traps for aspiring writer. Don't beat yourself up. That's something I see new writers do all the time, and don't question yourself as much. Um, People tend to look at their writing and be like, "Oh, wow, this is horrible," and it might be. There's definitely things that I'm really glad will never see the internet or anyone else's eyes or be seen by anyone else's eyes. But don't stop. Just keep going. Take a new spin, new story, new idea. You can also just get it in front of other people. Shop it to your friends, shop it to alpha readers, advanced readers, whatever you want to call them. Get some feedback, and then when they have questions, listen to them. There's definitely times where I will write something and somebody else will go through and read it, and they'll be like, well, what happened to his gear that he had last chapter? Or I thought he was already wearing a cloak, or whatever it is. And that's when you're like, oh, okay, right. And then you work on whatever it is that they tell you. Or if they don't understand the story, or they don't understand maybe part of the conversations, or they want more conversation, go back and see if you can add that. It'll probably make the story a lot better. Because those mental snags where people are, it's harder for a writer sometimes to see that in your own work. But if you go back with work, whenever somebody else looks at it with fresh eyes, they'll run into those, and then you can, that's where I need extra stuff. That's where I need to work on it and fix it. If you could tell your younger writer self anything, what would it be? Stop writing about dragons. Write about real people. I'm so glad those stories are gone. But no, in honesty, I would say keep writing. You're gonna eventually make it, so just keep at it. Don't give up, because I definitely gave up for several years, several times. Keep writing down those ideas. I have a binder somewhere around here that is just absolutely chock full of books, scene, character ideas, and I never stopped. And I actually go back to that sometimes for ideas. I highly recommend that if you're creative, you keep that stuff somewhere. And then eventually just pick something and work on it. Just say, I'm going to see this, whatever it is, to the end. And maybe the end is 5 chapters, maybe the end is a whole book. But your writing will improve the more you actually write. Let's see. I would ask about merchandise, but the more important question is how we can support you better as fans. What is your website or Patreon? Oh, well, thank you very much. First of all, that is a phenomenal question, and I'm honored. Patreon is the fastest and best way to support me. My Patreon is just patreon.com/Kamitoan. That is the best way to do it. The ebook is always great. Reading it. I don't have a website yet. I will eventually put one up with blog posts as well. But yeah, as fans, the Patreon is the best way to do it, or obviously reading the book, Kindle U or Kindle Unlimited. If you go on Royal Road and you chat, or you go to the Discord, I'm always there. I do have I don't know if there's a Discord link. I can maybe pass that so that there's an invite link for everybody. Let me go grab that real quick. Get an invite link. There we go. So support there. Always love questions and comments. I hope that answered your question. Thank you again. That was wonderful. Never give up. Better get madness out and onto the page. Absolutely correct. The first chapter may not be great, but you can always make it better the second time. What was an early experience where you learned that language had power? Interesting. That was, I had a friend named Sandro who was, I knew him in elementary school, and he was from Bosnia Herzegovina, and his family spoke Bosnian, and I had obviously never heard Bosnian before growing up in America. And I learned some words, and I talked to them, and just the power of language to instantly connect you to someone back then. It was like night and day. Once his family saw that I was willing to learn some of it, we became fast friends, and that became sort of a theme for the rest of my life. Where, here, let me give you the Discord link. Thank you, Geneva. I hit wrong buttons. That experience became something for the rest of my life, where I learned that if you learn something about somebody else's language, then suddenly it's easier to communicate. They appreciate it a lot more. And it's a really cliche phrase, but words do actually have power. And if you can find the right words to get through to somebody, it is monumental. So that's where that came from. How do you prepare or organize your thoughts for the systems and stories? I initially had, and my friends make fun of me for this a lot, I had sticky notes. I would write them down because I worked somewhere where I had to take that stuff home. So I would write down on sticky notes whenever I had that. And I had this absolute horrifying mess of sticky notes just all over my desk and all over my house, actually. So what I evolved from that into a binder, and then I went from that to modern day in Google Drive, where I have just page after page and folder after folder of different ideas and thoughts. And each story actually gets, at this point, each story has an Excel sheet of its own with many, many tabs and parts about the characters, their powers, how it works, the stats. They've also got another document for myself just for like chopped pieces where I'm like, this is a really great chapter. It doesn't fit. Or this scene is really cool, but I don't know where to put it yet. I will put all of that in a separate Word document and then refer back to it. And then if I have different conversation ideas, I'll put them in there. Google Drive or Word documents, however it works. That's usually how I organize my thoughts. Were your children driving powers in becoming a writer? Yeah, actually, my daughter, when she came out, that kind of changed my entire life and pushed me to sort of achieve more of my dreams, because being an author has always been one of my dreams, and it's still weird to call myself that, even though I'm finally published. I wanted to be able to tell her that her father had achieved some of his dreams, and so that I could use that to push her to achieve her own, just to show her that it's possible. And I couldn't do that unless I finished the book. And now that I'm finishing more of them, it feels a lot better. So absolutely, she was a driver. How many unpublished and half published? Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I probably have 30 or 40. I don't want to count right now. I probably could, but I'm not going to. There's probably 30 or 40 different stories that have anywhere from 3 to 10 chapters ready right now. That is not counting Rise of a Monster. That is not counting anything on Royal Road or Patreon. I have a lot in the works. If I ever take, and I hope I do, but if I ever take writing to a full-time job, those will see the light of day. If you could make merchandise, which of your characters would you want to base your merchandise on? Ooh, I have not actually thought about that. Merchandise of my characters. I think it'd be really cool to have one of Ryan Richards, the main character from Supervolution, because he keeps modifying his body, right? He's got a wooden arm now. He's got tiger eyes. He's got all sorts of stuff. He's got electric skin or electrically absorbent skin, copper stuff. Great meeting you. We're off to bed. Oh, thank you, Jez. It was wonderful to have you. Can Feel free to let me know your thoughts whenever you finish reading. Thank you. In the UK, wow. So definitely would love to see some of him. I would love to also see some of Sean and Jell. I think them as little action figures would be great because Jell's got a bunch of different forms now, and their form will continue to evolve as the story goes on. Especially with every new evolution, there would be like a new character model. So that would be really cool. For Supervolution, it would be really neat too, because some of those characters, like I said before, are based off real world friends. So that I could be like, hey, haha, you're an action figure. Congratulations. Let's see. What is your biggest regret as a new author? My biggest regret. Probably that it took me so long. I guess I put up a lot of mental blocks to actually finishing it, and I made certain steps of the process out to be these giant monumental beasts. When I actually went to go do them, I found that there was a way ahead, there was a way forward, and it actually, I mean, it was difficult or it was time consuming, but it was possible. And not doing that earlier, I think, would be my biggest regret. I could have gotten this started a lot sooner. What did you edit out of one of your books? Let's see. What did I edit out? I have side stories for Supervolution that will eventually see the light of day, probably only on Patreon, to be honest with you, because there's not enough for like a full anthology. But I have different stories from different parts of the world that are going on that I couldn't get out of my head, so I wrote them down. I actually ran a TTR, Mutants and Masterminds campaign inside Supervolution's world for some of my friends, and I wrote about that. And that whole side story is there. It didn't fit anywhere in the book. I didn't have somewhere to put it, so I cut it out, and that's where that went. It'll come back in eventually, or now that I have a few more scenes that I cut with different characters from different parts of the world. I always thought it'd be interesting to see what else is going on. Like, as this apocalypse is happening, it's not just happening to America or anywhere else. So we'll eventually see those, I think, in the side stories. Have you put yourself or any of your friends in books as heroes, villains, or otherwise? Yes. Supervolution, there are 3 of my friends actually have either they are directly in the book as themselves and their own powers and what they wanted, or a character that they've made and wanted to see inside the world. So they actually are in there. I think it makes it both easier and harder as a writer to write those scenes sometimes, because I know what they would do, I think, because I've been friends with them for so long. But I also want to do it justice, right? I also want to do them justice. So sometimes it makes it easier, sometimes it makes it a little harder. I do have some of them that they don't know they're in the books just yet, but they'll be coming up in the future. And I'm curious to see if any of them read the books and find out. There's also, I have some family members in Supervolution that they don't know, but I have a lot of respect for them. So they were inspirations for certain characters, and they are actually now forever enshrined in the book. I would ask what writer you would want to have write in your system, but there are too many that are amazing, and I wouldn't want to put you on the spot. That is entirely accurate. There's so much talent out there, the other authors. I would honestly be honored to see anyone's take. Anyone that wanted to, I would be very interested to see how they handled it. There's something that Penny Arcade does, the webcomic. Every once in a while, they have different comics come in and they do their take on the characters and make a comic. And I always thought those were really interesting. So it'd be really cool to see what somebody else does with with a world that has an apocalypse already happening, and everybody gets superpowers that are based on what they want out of life. There's different pockets of the world all the time, or sorry, there are different pockets of the world where different stories are playing out. So there's definitely a lot of meat on that particular bone. They could do what's going on in Canada or Mexico or Ireland or somewhere like that. That would be really, really cool. What's your favorite underappreciated novel? Let's see. Underappreciated. A lot of the ones that I read are already fairly well appreciated, which is great because they're phenomenal books. But I think one that doesn't get as much love outside of sort of the lit RPG community or the cultivation fantasy community is Beware of Chicken. That book is fantastic. If you're not aware of it, or you haven't heard of it before, cultivation type novels are sort of like the Eastern spirituality and growth, and they focus on gaining power that way. And Beware of Chicken is a guy who shuns all of that, goes back to some backwoods country and starts his own farm, and it's from his perspective and his chicken's perspective because he gets a rooster, and that rooster starts to gain power, and it is hilarious. I'm not going to spoil any of it. It's on Royal Road. It's out on Audible now. I highly recommend it. Definitely worth your time. Who has given you the bravery to write and publish your books? My mom, actually. She has been an inspiration my entire life. I get my work ethic from her. She was a big supporter always of me reading books, even when I was a kid and I had like 30 different books stacked into my school desk, and they would come and get me in trouble. And the teacher would complain because I wasn't listening to them. I was reading books. 100% would be my mother. Yeah, she's phenomenal. I don't know if that's a sappy answer or not, but she's definitely been one of my idols just growing up. So yeah, to you, Mom. This is water, but thank you everybody for the questions. Chief reason I write to get it all out of my head or be driven to madness. That is 100% accurate. I mentioned the binder of ideas that I have and the sticky notes that I would write down at work. If I don't get that out of my head, I can't stop thinking about it. And I won't end up working. So I'll just be sitting there like, oh, wow, I wonder what would happen if you gave a bunch of goblins some magical items. Yeah. Or if you gave them their own, empire starting cave. Yeah. That is definitely one of the reasons that drive me to write. Would you want to write Geneva into your books? Just kidding. Maybe. Maybe if we get to know each other a little more in the future, it would be entertaining to see. I would definitely ask permission, though. I don't put people in my books without their permission. And for the friends that I mentioned, they gave me permission a long time ago, whether or not they remember it. I think we're closing in on the end here, actually. But thank you, everybody, for coming. I don't know if I'm going to get shut off at 6 or not. The questions were wonderful. You've all been wonderful. Thank you for reading. Thank you for supporting me. This has been a dream come true, and I am astonished every day that this is something that I get to do now. I will be working and writing a lot more in the future, so there's a lot more to come. I guess there's less. What would you choose as your mascot avatar spirit animal? There's a bird. Everybody knows the phoenix, but in Iranian culture, it's called the sea morgue. I like that one as a spirit animal type. I would go with that one. But again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your support. This has been fantastic.